Welcome to Coruzant Technologies, home of the Digital Executive Podcast. Do you work in emerging tech, working on something innovative, maybe an entrepreneur? Apply to be a guest at www.coruzant.com/brand. Welcome to the Digital Executive. Today's guest is Angel Tuccy. Angel Tuccy is a podcast host, 15-time best-selling author, and creator of Podlicity Method and Authorlicity Program, designed to help entrepreneurs turn their message into ongoing visibility, leads, and revenue. Known as the Book Angel, Angel helps business owners publish powerful books and leverage podcast interviews as a top traffic source to grow their audience, authority, and client base. Her media career began when she launched a podcast for fun. In 2009, that show was discovered by a local radio station, launching a 10-year broadcasting career where she became an award-winning radio host, earning honors including Most Influential Women of the Year, Best Morning Talk Show, and Best Morning Talk Show Team. Well, good afternoon, Angel. Welcome to the show.
Well, hello, Brian. Super excited to be here.
Absolutely, my friend. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you navigating calendars. I know you just got back into town, so this is crazy that you're spending your evening with me, boring me on a podcast. But I just appreciate you, really do. Being from Orlando, I'm in Kansas City and traversing time zones. So again, thank you. Angel, I'm going to jump right into your first question. When you take us back to the beginning of your journey, how did launching a podcast for fun evolve into a 10-year award-winning radio career and platform you built today?
Well, I will tell you, I didn't expect it to, right? Who knew where podcasting was going to go way back then? I think that was 2008 when we started it, but it was discovered by my local radio station. And so when I wrote the book, Get Discovered, it wasn't just a clever title. It was actually my journey. My local radio station discovered it, invited me to be a podcast host with no background in broadcasting or journaling. But here was the secret, Brian. We had our podcast professionally produced. We would go into a gentleman's basement. He had a studio in his basement. It was professionally produced. We had music, intro music. I think Twitter was just starting way back then. And they liked it. They liked the content. And it turned into, they opened the door, but I had to walk through it. But it turned into a 10-year career in broadcasting where I ended up being nationally syndicated. I was doing 2 shows back to back when I retired from broadcasting, 4 hours a day of talk radio. And I will tell you that being a podcast guest is my jam. So even though I've been on vacation, or not on vacation, but I've been traveling, I love being here with you.
Wow. Thank you. Appreciate that. That's too kind of you. I love backstories. And that's what this podcast is about. It's about focusing on the person, not necessarily what they're trying to pitch, but there's always a backstory. And I just love that, how your creativity and you stumbled into something that became your career. That's just totally awesome. And thank you for sharing your story. Angel, your Podlicity method focuses on leveraging podcast guesting. Why do you believe being a guest is one of the most underutilized growth strategies today?
Oh, well, Brian, I will tell you, it was by accident that I landed in this space. I, of course, was in broadcasting. When I left broadcasting, I started traveling as a speaker, teaching entrepreneurs, authors, experts how to leverage media opportunities and appearances. And I started helping my clients get booked. And we did a whole ecosystem. Maybe it was a stage, maybe it was a press release, maybe it was a radio interview, a television. We ran the gamut. But what started happening was my clients started coming to me saying, Angel, I only want to get booked on podcasts. And at the time, I was using podcast guesting as a filler. So if I didn't have an actual stage or an actual speaking event, I would just use podcast guesting to fill in, right, the extra spaces, because I believe in 2 appearances a week to create a visibility streak. Like if you want to be consistently get your message out there, you need to be somewhere every week, and ideally 2 places. And I actually have an acronym for it, and I call it 2 apples a week creates a visibility streak. But I was using podcasting kind of as a filler. My guests and my clients were now asking specifically to get booked on podcasts. And I started paying attention to how valuable it was, because I could be a podcast guest from anywhere. I could do it from home. I didn't have to travel, no expenses to being a podcast guest. I could be in California, in Kansas City, all on the same day. And the reach was farther. Like if I go to an event, I reach the audience while I'm there. But podcast guesting, somebody can listen to me next week, next month, next year. And the reach is even bigger and broader and everlasting. And so now it's my favorite. It's my go-to. And so if you are looking for more visibility, go and be a guest in front of somebody else's audience. Like, you're doing all the heavy lifting. I just get to show up and talk about the thing I'm most excited about.
That is so cool. And everybody loves a good story. You've got a great story. Everybody has their own story, but that's what makes it fun. And you're totally right. Podcasting is underutilized, and it's a great way to build your brand. It's a great way to get that exposure, as you said, and it's pretty easy to do nowadays. And a podcast is evergreen. If you think about it, you talked about people can be listening to you a month, a year from now, something that you recorded previously. So that's pretty cool. So Angel, you've helped thousands of entrepreneurs grow through media exposure. Can you share a success story where podcasting or publishing dramatically changed someone's business trajectory?
Oh my goodness, there are lots of them, and I think that's why it's so beautiful. Is you don't have to have a presentation, you don't have to be a really good public speaker, because you're just a guest, right? You're having a conversation, and again, talking about the thing that you love talking about. And so because of the accessibility of podcast guesting and really most media opportunities, there's so much every single day, Brian, hundreds of thousands of journalists, of podcast hosts, event planners, they're looking for guests and they're looking for stories. And how lucky are you? It's already inside of you, right? It's your story. So when it comes to some success stories, like, I would say almost every single one of my clients is a success story at some level because they finally have a platform to share their story. They finally have an audience, right? They're talking to already an audience who's buyer aware, who is interested. So every single one of my clients, I think, is a success story. But then, of course, then there are those that get booked on TEDx Talks. They get their books out on a billboard in Times Square. They now get featured on TV. They now get hundreds of leads. Their business is growing and they're monetizing. I mean, I just had a client who recently, he did a book launch. He has over 6 million followers on Instagram, thanks to his book launches. We have another client who ended up getting a documentary with Dennis Quaid because of her visibility and her appearances. Another one started her own streaming television network. Deb ended up being the number 3 book sales in all of Canada when she launched her book. I mean, there are just so many of them. And I love that every single one of them is actually a success story.
That's awesome. And the way I look at this, the real success story, and I know you're a very humble person, but to think that you are helping these people launch to get to these places of success or hitting goals or maybe becoming a famous influencer one day, at the end of the day, Angel Tuccy was behind that person to get to their success in some way or fashion. So that's awesome. Appreciate you. Okay. And Angel, the last question of the day before we wrap up, as we look ahead to the future, how do you see the future of podcasting, personal branding, and media visibility evolving, especially with the rise of AI and new content platforms?
Oh, it is definitely a changing landscape for sure. I've said for a long time that because of AI and technology, it is more important than ever to have our voice out there. People want to connect with humans. Even though AI is going to create cloning and you can do this all automatically and they can have your voice, it is more than ever, people are going to be craving that human connection. And I think the more often we can share our voice and get booked on podcasts and be there, it's what we need. And so it's more important than ever to start sharing your voice more often as you can, on as many platforms as you can. The world needs it. The world needs it and will crave it, despite all the tools that are coming alongside. There will never be a time where we don't need and crave that connection with another human.
I totally agree. And believe me, this podcast talks a lot about AI. I've interviewed some CEOs out of Silicon Valley. That's all they do is build AI platforms. So,
well, and I've got a great AI mentor who hers is all recorded, and it's not even her, but it's her voice and it's her likeness. And it's pretty scary what can be duplicated, but that's why we need voices and real people more often.
Absolutely.
More than ever.
Yep. I really appreciate you. Thank you for coming on today, Angel, and I look forward to speaking with you real soon.
Thanks, Brian.
Bye for now.